Okay, so Victor, you're here. We're here in the lovely UHE room, which last year was the organisers' office. So UHE have got so big, they've taken over the organisers' office.
Yes, we've
That's
been
awesome.
upgraded. That's very nice. Very lovely 70s room. Very nice brown wood everywhere.
Everything's 70s here.
Yes.
And we're lucky to be inside because it's just started raining, which is kind of not so good.
Yeah, oh, true.
But so we're looking at Hive 2, which
exactly.
is the UHE's more accessible synthesizer, right? I think that would be the way to describe it. Or
That's
more,
a good way to describe it. Or
lower CPU footprint, or
lower CPU and sort of more approachable than the more modular sort of Zebra approach or the really modular Bacilla approach. So this is supposed to be really easy to use. Everything on one page that you need. So classic synth layout, two simple synth voices left and right, combined then and going into the effects section. There's a 12-slot mod matrix down here. And we've added a few things for version 2. And I'll mention them quickly. So last year there was an update where we added wavetable oscillators. You'll find them in the oscillator section up here. There's now bigger editor windows, so you see the shapes, the wavetable shapes moving. So everything is set up to work as quickly as possible, ideally. So there's a sort of quick edit section in here. There's a basic envelope behind this. You can trigger a one-shot mode or looping forwards and backwards. And if you need any sort of more detailed editing, you would, of course, go to the mod matrix and do it there.
Right, okay.
So the new stuff in Hive is, of course, the user interface, brand new, which means also expanded drag and drop capabilities. So you go to a modulation source, drag that little sort of crosshair, click on that crosshair, drag it onto a target, and that modulation is then added down at the bottom.
Oh, just really easy, yeah.
Yeah, so it's added in the mod matrix, and you can, do stuff with it there. So that means the mod matrix also has some new features. Received them actually last year in the 1.2 update, and that's modifiers. So when previously all the sort of translation from modulation source to target is usually a linear translation, we can now bend that sort of modulation shape a bit more. So assume you have like the beginning of the triangle waveform in the LFO. As an example, that's a really linear sort of modulation if you put that on cutoff, for example. And now with the modifiers that we have down here, that extra row of buttons, you can sort of bend that shape a bit more. You can sort of give it a curvature. You can rectify it. You can just use the top half, the positive half, or the negative half.
It's kind of like adding your own custom controller.
Yeah, exactly. You can quantize it so that just at certain values, the new LFO value is then applied to the cutoff. There's a few quantization, like minor. We have also scales, not just note intervals, but also scales. So if you use an LFO onto the oscillator pitch, it can now have a musical sort of meaning applied to it.
Particularly audio rates, I guess, as well. So.
Yeah, with Hive, in order to keep CPU consumption low, it's not going into audio rate.
But intervals of sure would make sense, yeah.
Yeah. So plus additional slew limiter to round off a few edges if you want. So the new stuff is, I feel the new stuff makes Hive come alive a bit more. So we have all the new stuff is modulation sources. And that's the first thing that you see is these new shapes down here. So it's a segment envelope. We call it a shape sequencer. So you have 8 segments. You can click on the segment and edit in the big window. So move start and end point. With a mod wheel, you can add ratcheting. You can add ratchets.
Oh, wow.
You can click and bend the shapes. It's really nice.
Yeah.
And
like Bezier.
Yeah, exactly. You do this for every shape. You see those 4 lanes, A, B, C, and D. Those are 4. We say we have 4 shape sequencers, but not sheep sequencers. And they all are being fed with those 8 shapes that you define. Right. So if you want just the first 2 shapes to be your first sequence,
so it's like a matrix as well.
Yeah, like a matrix. So just those first 2 shapes are now my shape sequence A, played with that tempo. played in that order. So there's several modes: loop forward, loop backward, random position on each synchronized
Wow.
step.
So I mean, for something that's simple,
Yeah, yeah.
it's actually still really complicated, or there's a lot of complex potential
Yeah, there's a
there.
lot. Yeah, you can do a lot more with it, but you don't have to. Ideally, the default position is sort of what you'd expect it to do, and then if you want a bit more, you like click on that selection field and you get a bit more. So the new modes, I think, make it come alive a bit more, make it a bit more interesting. Currently, as you would expect with this sort of segmented envelope, it's in perfect sync to your host tempo.
Okay, yeah.
And if like the one thing that we hid from that is you can sort of break that synchronization. You can
Have it free running. Right.
Yeah, you can not free running, but you can get it out of sync a bit by going into the mod matrix. Let me just initialize one of the slots. For example, it's a bit of a hidden target parameter, rate, for each of the shape sequencers, rate A in this case. Let me take that. And if you want to just have the speed be a bit offset in contrast to your host tempo,
They just had a random, right?
yeah, a random, for example, or a constant, just have a constant offsets, make it a bit faster or a bit slower than the actual tempo that you define.
Oh,
here.
right. Okay. Interesting.
And also, this is of course a modulation target. You can have an LFO.
So I'm
target
guessing
that.
that my next question would be, have you got a patch that demonstrates this?
Yes, yes, actually.
Is the correct
Okay.
answer.
Yes, we have that. We have that. One example is, let's see the concert bass drum. So in this patch, that first shape sequencer A, that A lane, is used in one-shot mode. So it's just a regular envelope that's played really fast, just as a one-shot from start to finish. And the time base is currently that. I don't know what it is in English. 130. Well, 130 seconds. For that patch, it wasn't fast enough. So I added a constant offset to the rate. In this case, hang on. This makes it reactive velocity. Okay, let's switch to this slot. So there's a constant offset to the rate to make it even faster. You see here.
Ah, okay. Right. So you can add.
Yeah, you can add speed to it, and let's hear that patch actually. So what it does is the attack phase of the sound is this modulates filter cutoff and volume, and this is a drum sound. So let me put on the headphones.
So you're getting flams and rolls, that sort of.
Yeah, exactly. Like several drummers.
Oh, right. That's really
Yeah.
effective. Really
Yeah,
effective.
yeah, it is.
Excellent.
So that's one example of where it makes sense to actually make it more fast than what you have available via that button.
So you're designing patches for this yourself as well?
Yes,
So
exactly.
right. Okay.
All the TUC patches are from me, and we have about 10, 15 sound designers contributing to this update.
Yeah, you always do a lot of patches for your stuff, don't you? So.
Yeah, of course. Howard Scar as well, and one of the sound designers, for example, used all the new modulation sources to sort of develop sort of like endlessly generative music. So you hold a note for several minutes, and it doesn't really repeat. Like the sequence overlaps and mixes, and it just goes on, and new stuff happens after a few minutes.
That's interesting.
Yeah. So the shape sequencers can be applied to a lot of different stuff, not just arpeggiating eighth notes of something.
Right.
And we try to emphasize that it's not just for the one rhythmic thing of eighth note shapes, but you can do a lot with it.
So very powerful. Yeah.
Very powerful. So the second thing we added to this Hive 2.0 update are the function generators, and they are a bit inspired by ideas from the modular world. They have several modes. One mode. So I should maybe say the function generators transform a modulation signal into something else.
Yeah.
You can have anything as input, LFO, or even your keyboard gate, and that either triggers an envelope that you define here with attack and decay, give it a slope, or that's the envelope mode and the one-shot mode. They're both envelope type modes. Then we have the cycle mode, makes the function generator behave like an LFO. Actually, I can visualize that because we have a scope. And
yeah,
there's already stuff assigned. The top is the LFO, the random LFO here. Let me see. Oh yeah, okay. So the second lane, the green one that you see moving here, that's the envelope that the function generator is spitting out currently.
Right. Okay.
The shape.
So it's good. I mean, that extra visualization makes it a lot easier to program. I think because
you can actually see what you're doing.
Yeah, absolutely. Is this the patch we just heard as well? The one with all the evolutions? Yes.
Yes, it is. Yeah.
So you're using all of that.
We're using all of that in that patch.
So that's sort of in addition to just regular envelopes and whatnot. I mean,
exactly.
Some function generators in terms of modulation on modular kit is in place of, or as
exactly.
can be used as a rise and a fall or that kind of thing.
Yeah, exactly. And this is in addition to the regular envelopes that we have, 4 envelopes, 2 LFOs, but the shapes that the function generator creates can be much more lively, much more organic. They can evolve because you can modulate their parameters, and they will. They have the advantage of not, an envelope would, if you press a new note, it would probably retrigger at 0, and maybe cut off your previous. If it's a monophonic sound, it cut off its previous movement. If it's not one of those singing envelopes like from the Minimoog. Which these aren't, our regular envelopes aren't. But the function generator sort of, like an envelope follower does, it rides on top of an input signal in the envelope following mode. Or let me maybe demonstrate another of its modes. So let me load a patch. Let's actually use this one. So this preset, let me try and visualize another thing the function generator does. That's a regular simple patch. It's a chord, 4 notes. So when I move up the mod wheel in this case, I'm blending in the function generator in a sort of LFO mode. And one thing you see here, as soon as I let go of the mod wheel, it sort of samples and holds the last value of the LFO cycle.
Ah, okay. So it's almost a random. Right. Okay. Yeah, I see.
So if you apply it to if you apply that to the note you're playing, in this case,
it finishes in a different pitch.
Finishes, yeah, exactly. But the advantage to pitch bend, of course, is that the new note that you play after that, it won't have that bending. So the first note will still release with that new pitch, but your next
it's polyphonic.
note, yes, it's almost like polyphonic, pitch bend.
Ah, okay, yeah. I see. Interesting.
And of course, all the modes will be explained in the manual. I won't go into too many details now, but yeah, these are the new elements, and we think that because they're all modulation sources, and we think that Hive really comes alive with these new sources, because it can add a lot of movement and new interesting things that happen.
Well, maybe if you could play us a couple more patches so we can get some sound examples.
Yes, exactly. Put on my headphones. So I'll try and play a pad on this really small.
That's very subtle, isn't it? Lovely.
Yeah. Let me find something else.
So these are some of yours?
This is one of mine. Let me play another one from some other sound designer. Also, of course, in each preset's info field, we say what all the performance controls do, if they do anything.
Yeah.
So Aftertouch adds some swell, mod wheel, more distortion, and let me demonstrate what these all do. So you can use all these now in a performance. Oh well, now we're always able to do that.
lovely sound to end the day with. That makes me feel all dreamy and kind of warm, ready to relax. That's awesome.
Yes, yes. I think that's pretty much all that I can say about the new Hive. And we have lots of new presets, of about 400 new presets roughly, about 20 new wavetables. So all in all, we have 140 wavetables, and you can add your own wavetables. Just make sure that they adhere to the format that we are using.
Okay, right.
It's all explained in the manual. Our wavetables also can come in the form of a script file. We also ship a document with Hive that explains the script language that we use.
So people can get as deep as they like.
Yeah,
really,
they can get. I can maybe show you a quick example of one of those. Let me see. Wavetables as scripts. So these are the files up here. And let's open the actual folder on your hard drive just to show you what they look like. So this would be, it's a bit small. This would be a script.
So it's just like a descriptive mathematical description.
It's like a mathematical function, and Hive, when you load that wavetable, turns it into a wave file upon loading, and then you can use that as your wavetable.
Wow, okay, that's interesting.
So you can play with that a bit. There's a lot to... Oh, and something that I think is quite nice about our implementation of the wavetable scanning is that a wavetable consists of a sequence of frames, of single cycle frames, and you can cut that sequence into a few pieces and sort of stack them on top of each other, so you get a sort of 2D field of single cycle waveforms, and you can not just sweep then in the one dimension forwards and backwards, but also in between those divisions that you created.
So the interpolation part.
Yeah.
Right. Okay.
So as an example, let me select one that might be a bit more that has more to offer. So up here there's an information. This one has 80 frames, so 80 single cycles, and regularly you'd sweep through them in a single dimension from left to right. So when you increase the number of tables that this wavetable represents to, let's say, 2, now you have 2 wavetables of 40 frames each, and you can now sweep also between the 2 halves that you just created.
Ah, okay.
So it's like a 2D field of single cycle waveforms, and that's done with that new sort of second dimension parameter.
Sweet. So available now, obviously.
Soon, in a few weeks. In a few weeks, yeah.
I've heard that before from any.
Yeah, I know. It's out tomorrow.
So, but in a few weeks.
Soon,
okay.
in a few weeks, yeah.
What sort of price have you?
It's the same price as before, 149 euros on our website. The update for old Hive 1 owners is 20 euros.
Right.
But there was a cutoff date after which I think at some point in January when we announced Hive 2, that was the cutoff date, and all new purchasers get the update for free.
Right. Okay. Great. Thank you very much, Victor.
Well, my pleasure.